Hi, I'm Mike Winkler, and I'm the Principal Managing Broker for CBBain in Issaquah, Washington.
And I'm E.J. Bolds. I'm the Principal Managing Broker for CBBain on Mercer Island, Washington.
EJ, in our last video blog post, we talked about paragraph X and part of the buyer protections. But you know, before you can have those protections, you have to actually negotiate the purchase and sale. And so I thought today we could talk about negotiating strategies for both buyers and sellers.
Yeah, and it's something that's probably misunderstood by the public and maybe even a little bit by some of the real estate brokers out of there, because the issue in our market, and most markets all over the country where we've had declining markets over the last couple of years, is when a buyer decides to make an offer on a home, why not make a really low offer, and how low should you go when you make that offer? Sometimes it depends on what's happening in the hyper-local markets, because as we sit here in June of 2011, some of the markets are improving, and you might not be able to make that really low offer in the market to get a house. What are some of the other things that people need to think about, Mike?
I think they need to think about themselves and how they respond when the shoe's on the other foot. And more often than not, one of the lines that I've heard you actually say many, many times, which is so true, is that emotion trumps logic. And so while it appears that given all of the information that's available to consumers today, which is good, information's great, it sometimes leads to the kind of frenzy of, well, it's a distressed market and I can take advantage to get the best opportunity for myself. And it results in an offer that's being proffered that is very low and does cause an emotional response instead of a logical response. And so while we used to have sort of a real estate etiquette, and I think that's where some of the misconceptions are about, well, why would you worry about that? It's a business transaction. Well, it is a business transaction to some degree, but it's also an emotional transaction. And so, you know, when you make an offer that's so low, you sort of poison the pool, and a seller may be in a position where they need to sell, but they don't have to sell to you. So they can make that decision. And so sometimes common sense needs to kind of filter in that process.
I agree, and I think the other issue is that if a house is overpriced, obviously you're going to make a lower offer.
Yes.
And talk about that price as you negotiate. So really what you're looking for as a buyer is, for lack of a better term, is the sweet spot. In other words, I want to make a high enough offer that somewhat entices the seller to negotiate with me, and a low enough offer to make sure that I'm not paying too much for the home. And of course your realtor will help you determine what that sweet spot is. What about sellers, Mike? What are some of the things that sellers need to think about in this issue?
Well, I think sellers need to anticipate that this is a process. And so just like the buyer is looking for that sweet spot, the seller needs to anticipate that there's going to be negotiation and have some room in their pricing strategy for negotiation. Because as much as we'd like to say, oh, this is so simple, you'll just make an offer and there'll be an acceptance, that's not the way it usually works. It's there is room for negotiation, and for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
So
how much room should a seller leave for negotiation? In other words, is there a point where if they leave too much room to negotiate, they're in trouble? How does that work?
Well, let me restate what you said. If they price it too high, will they get any offers and even the opportunity to negotiate? And the answer is probably no. And then they put the realtor in a very awkward spot of having to advertise more and more to even get people in, and then they of course run the risk of having a stale listing. So what they should do is listen to their realtor in the first place and price it right. Now, interestingly, historically, the Northwest MLS would tell you that the average list to sale price is about 97%, so there's about a 3% difference. In our current market, it's probably more in the 90-94. CBBain, our national affiliate, the average is 93 to 95 right now. So so it demonstrates what the distressed market with short sales and bank-owned properties has done. where people have come in now and demanded lower prices. And so you have to be careful.
The other thing that sellers need to do is, and we call it listening to the market. So if your house has been on the market longer than a comparable home, then that's an indication you're overpriced. If you've had a number of showings and no offers, rule of thumb, 12 to 15 showings and no offers, you're probably overpriced. So again, the seller needs to listen to the market, and when in doubt, they need to get an appraisal, which raises another question. Isn't that what the real estate agent's there for? Why would they ever need an appraisal?
When will we get an appraisal? Well, I'm not going to tell you, because stay tuned. That's our next video blog post.
I'm E.J. Bolds.
I'm Mike Winkler. Till next time.